Today, the president did the thing that everyone was freaking out about. He suggested, hey, maybe we delay the election. What do you think? Until we can figure it out. Everyone freaked out. First you had the wave of institutionally invested liberals saying, don't worry, that's unconstitutional. Then you had the traumatized populists screaming back. When has that stopped them before? But I've got to say, right now, I'm putting my money, and as I said, as I must always stipulate, I don't know what the hell is happening. None of us do. We're only guessing. We're blindly flailing in the dark. So we can only project forward our understanding very, very close to the front of us. So anything beyond a few feet is mist, shadows and mist. But my guess there is he's setting up an alibi for losing. Way to whine about it, because as people have pointed out, yeah, if he wants to not have an election, he could do that. I guess he could say that. He could order that to be done, and maybe Bob Barr and the Justice Department say, like Pompeo suggested, yeah, okay, that's fine. But the election isn't carried out by the... elections aren't carried out by the United States government. It should be, but it's not. They're carried out by the states. So unless he's going to send the military units to occupy democratic states to force them not to vote, that doesn't work. If they have an election and he's claiming he's throwing a flag on it and saying none of this counts because you're doing mail order ballots and we need to delay it, that could be affirmed in court, and it could be affirmed by, as people have pointed out, the states that Biden wins that have Republican legislatures could hypothetically give those electoral votes to Trump even if he didn't win them. And none of that is technically impossible, I guess, but I don't see him having the buy-in with any of these institutions necessary to have them help him do that. I mean, a good example, I would say, is Matt Bevin. Matt Bevin is the recently ousted governor of Kentucky. He had one term. He basically promised to undo Obamacare in Kentucky, a state that has more poor people in it per capita than almost any state we have. And he did that. He canceled a program that was working well to provide low-cost health care to people in a state that desperately needed it. A real piece of shit. But he also governed as just a Trump-like contradiction heightener. He covered his corporate agenda with constant antagonistic culture war. And the thing is, and so then he ran against the son of the last governor, Stephen Brashear, and Brashear won, but Bevin tried to challenge the results. Bevin tried to say that he wasn't going to recognize the votes, and he could have, and he was going to make a demand for a recount, even though he was outside the margin of error for one, at which point all bets are kind of off. And this is a situation where technically this could have worked, even if it was destroying norms. It could have happened because Kentucky has a Kentucky has a Republican-controlled legislature, or at that time, I don't know what it is now, and so they could have voted to, yes, endorse Bevin's call for a recount against even the rules. And they didn't do it because they didn't like him either. He had no investment with the state GOP because he had governed like a one-man wrecking crew bent on his own self-aggrandizement. And so when he lost, that was a gift for the Republicans in the House and Senate there who didn't have to deal with him anymore. And I am saying that if the chips actually fall for a Trump-esque coup attempt, where he has to press the button that says all of this hypothetical loyalty that is now trickled out through the entirety of the Republican Party apparatus must now all be brought into action on my behalf. Right now, I don't think that was what would happen. I think he might press the button, but then it would not activate anybody because they would want to get rid of him too. They want to get rid of him fucking too. And even if they don't, I don't think the true believers are in enough sufficient positions of leverageable influence in the requisite array of institutions, state, federal, judicial, legislative, military, law enforcement. They would have to come together behind that. Just don't see it. Now, on the other hand, he thinks he's going to lose. He wants to have a way to lose in his mind without having lost. And that is to call the whole thing rigged and then walk away. Now, that's going to get people killed, I think. I think you're going to see more than a few Q people get pushed off the edge by that. And yeah, there'll be some mass shootings maybe, or attempts. I mean, the Q score so far is very low. The lethality of Q is very low. Even the most damaged Q people seem to be too damaged to successfully kill many people. You got that guy who just posted up in a van across the Hoover Dam, holding up a sign demanding that like some attorney general's report be declassified. Like Trump's got this whole master plan for Q, and he's going to drop the thing on his say-so. But no, he's going to listen to this idiot who fucking waved a sign in the front of the Hoover Dam instead. That undermines that act means you don't even understand your own theory. It's trust the plan. They know best, and you're going to push their fucking. It's like they're committing heresy. It's like Job. They're asking things of God. Where were you when I hung the heavens? How dare you fucking tell me when I'm supposed to release the Attorney General's plan or arrest the pedophiles? No man shall know the hour of the day. And there was that guy who went to Comet Ping Pong and just like shot one hole through a wall and then left. Apparently there was a Q guy in Sweden who chopped his girlfriend's head off. And there was like a Q guy who killed his father with a katana. That's going to happen, but that's what it's going to be. Because since when, to anybody but Trump and his supporters, not people in power, not military leaders, not people in Congress, most people in Congress, except for the real shiny-eyed true believers, even in the judiciary, none of these people, they don't view the ascension of a regular democratic administration as apocalyptic, because for the most part, they have not entirely ingested the Kool-Aid. Now, when they do, then all this is over. Once that happens, once the Republican Party is completely on the same page and has fully metabolized the notion of the Democrats as existential threats in themselves, on par with like the Communist Party in the 40s, then all bets are off. I don't think we're there yet. But of course, let me stipulate, I thought that Trump made sense and that a Trump-esque figure was inevitable, but I thought we weren't there yet. But once again, I think the difference is we're talking about an electorate on one hand, which basically went to Trump not because of a overwhelming, being taken with his message, mostly by disaffection and people checking out. And this would be the decisions of people at the highest levels of the sinews of our state, and I don't think they yet see it that way. I think they still are like, we can do business with them. Joe Biden, I know that guy. We made money during Obama. Everybody made out. Everybody got to do whatever they want to do. The Army guys got to kick up sand, and the CIA guys got to have fun adventures in Ukraine and Syria and Libya and shit. The cocaine flow continued. The child wrangling and trafficking networks hummed along. The symphony of commerce was uninterrupted. And Biden is explicitly telling them more of the same. Their fucking party met explicitly to denounce, in no uncertain terms, the insurgent left that is part of their broad electoral coalition. And they have every ability to do that because that insurgent left has no institutional ability to provide leverage against the Democratic Party in any way. Not yet, anyway. This is not a situation where people are going to risk it all. For a man who most people who know him know is not in any way stable or, more importantly, loyal. Or competent, or any of the things you would want in somebody that you're going to go fucking cross the Rubicon for. I think the reason people are more credulous of this than they probably should be is because they are imbibing all of these cultural products and all of this output, social media output by his voters. And although the process of the voters' views slowly assimilating through capillary action up into the upper reaches of the party, which has definitely happened. It's not a complete process. I don't think we have enough proof of that. But again, that's in August, or that's in late June. In November, who the fuck knows what the ground conditions will be? Who knows how the economy and COVID and the protest movements and the escalation between police and protesters and good old fashioned race conflict. I mean, there's a number of groups out there who are angling to provoke a shooting war, a helter-skelter-esque conflagration. And, I don't think that's likely, but there's Tinder. And as a result, that's why I can't say with any kind of certainty what I think is going to happen. But I'd say right now, Trump is tweeting that not as a I don't even understand what the idea is. If he wants to do that, he should just do it. Or I guess, no, what do they call it? Testing the water. He's testing the water for this. Maybe, but when has he ever, does that really describe his communication style? Gently testing the water for certain ideas? Or does he reflexively just tweet about what he sees? He watched a guy on Stuart Varney's show on Fox News, Fox Business, some fucking, some Guido-ass fucking Republican pizzeria owner in Long Island. He sees him going like, Trump's doing a great job! And he goes, oh, go get the pizza, it's wonderful. That's as much thought as he puts into this shit. And so why is he saying that? Because he wants an excuse. Maybe in a few months he'll look around and be like, holy crap, maybe I can hold on to this thing. But right now, I think he looks around and he sees, not good. And the thing is, he might be wrong. Maybe Trump wins. Polling, obviously, 2016, can really put the stake in the heart of any kind of confidence you can have in polling. But for me, it boils down to this. It's often been said that every election involving an incumbent president ends up boiling down to one question that every voter subconsciously or consciously asks themselves. And that is, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And that traditionally has been what reelects or defeats an incumbent. Now, take Obama, for example. Things were pretty bad in 2012. The unemployment rate was like 9%, I think. It was still, the recovery was early and rocky. But he was elected during a literal economic meltdown. He was elected in the middle of a slow motion economic collapse. And so people were better off. Even if things got worse, like even if things solidified into something worse, they were solid. And that's an improvement. George H.W. Bush, just one of the great, just tragic stories. Beautiful. I think I've talked about this. The beautiful poetry of this guy, who mastered the sinews of the American state and party system and its connection to petroleum and the world markets. The guy, it's like he's basically Christopher Plummer in Syriana, this maestro, CIA agent, Republican gray eminence, the man who basically forged the alliance between Eastern capital and the emerging Sun Belt West. Ran more coke through Central America than Pablo Escobar and the Cali cartel combined. Literally knew where the bodies were buried, maybe up to and including JFK. And he's a loser, one-termer, because of a tiny little recession that hit in early 1992. Just, boop, it wasn't even a big one. And it immediately, the recovery from it was galloping. You had the whole Clinton boom after that. He'd even engineered a war to keep his numbers up. If anybody's listened to Blowback, the Iraq War was a trap laid by the Bush administration to give a pretext for a war that they could then prosecute, that would boost his poll numbers, create a new American-led military order to fill the gap created by the collapse of the Soviet Union, and to justify Cold War or higher levels of military spending in the face of calls for their cut. They told Hussein in so many words, we don't care if you invade Kuwait, just like we didn't care and in fact encouraged you to invade Iran. So he does it. so that we can smash him, so that we can squash him like a bug. And it worked. 80% approval rating. God Emperor fucking push. No more wimp comments ever. But it ended too early. We won too good. And then the economy just had a little beep. Loser. Clinton gets the early dot-com fucking bubble money, gets to just whoop, get him through there in 1996, bridge to the 21st century. And in my memory, I cannot think of a president who has gone into re-election where people's answer to that question will be more universally no. Now, of course, for a lot of people, a disturbingly large number, that's not going to matter because they have an internal ideological buffer that turns the awfulness of what around them into more proof of how good he is. But that is not enough people to re-elect him. I hope people get that. I hope people haven't convinced themselves through just the ubiquity of Trump and the solidity of his base that it is a majority in any way. Even among the half of people who vote, it is around 40 to 42%. And I would say the vast majority of everyone else is going to answer, fucking hell no, I'm not. Unless you're Jeff Bezos, fuck no, I'm not better off than I was 4 years ago. And elections are still won at those margins. And so, assuming that we actually get an election that is assuming the COVID situation in November is sufficient to allow for an election that goes off with any kind of legitimacy, that's a big if. I think he's going to lose. And probably by too big of a margin for him to even realistically claim fraud in a way that would get others to rally to his banner. But like I said, that's right now. But I mean, how the hell do you beat that? How do you answer that question? Unless the person is, like I've talked about, the liberal anti-racist idea involves talking to people who have essentially already agreed with your premise. It's the same way with this. The only way to spin the question of how are you better off now than you were 4 years ago is to have someone already invested in the idea that, well, Trump is trying to change everything for the better, and the media and the Chinese and all of the Democrats and even the Republicans, they're trying to stop him. Unless you already believe that, there's no way that you can look at his performance and find it salutatory to your life. Salutatory, whatever. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. The fact that he's running against a senile mummy who does not appear to know where he is, that's a concern. But I kind of think Trump is counter-mobilizing enough to outweigh that. I don't think, because I think a lot of people, there's the theory of mobilization that there's something called counter-mobilization where you, by activating your core supporters, also activate the core supporters of your opponent. And there was a thinking, I think, for Democrats that assumed that Hillary was going to win in 2016. They believed, well, yeah, okay, we know Hillary isn't terribly popular. She stands in for a lot of things people don't like. And that means the Republicans, even if they don't like Trump, are going to come out to vote against her. But Trump is just as counter-mobilizing for our side. People hate him and don't want him to be president. And I think one of the big shocks of 2016 is that there was an asymmetrical counter-mobilization. That Hillary got people to the polls to vote against her way more than Trump got people to the polls to vote against him, because he was a hypothetical thing to vote against. You didn't want him to be in because he seemed like a bad guy and erratic and racist and all that, but you weren't really tacking a agenda to that other than just amorphous badness if you're a liberal. For conservatives, Hillary Clinton stood in for a very specific legacy that they abhorred. And I think that the thing that's going to work for the Democrats' advantage this time is that I think Biden is much less counter-mobilizing than Hillary was. And Trump, now that he's been president for 4 years, and it has gone as badly as the most dire prediction of someone who didn't like him on the day he won, how it would have gone, that's going to fill in the gap of Biden enthusiasm. That's the theory. I don't know if it's true. I suspect it might be. because people don't hate Biden the way that they hated Clinton. Like his entire hit on Biden is now about competence and brain power. And the thing is, people don't actually care that much about that. Because they kind of know at a certain level, the president doesn't really run anything. It's a whole fucking squad. It's a team. And then there's the vice president. It's like, it doesn't really, and it's not like Trump is setting the world on fire. The guy spent 2 months bragging about passing a basic cognitive faculty test. Essentially he bragged about like passing a concussion protocol. That doesn't make the contrast. And that was what Hillary's problem, is that she could never make the contrast with Trump work, because everything you could say about Trump had a symmetrical thing you could say about Hillary. From corruption to sexual assault and harassment, crooked charities, no talent kids getting jobs they don't deserve. Uncanny. Not the same thing here. What does Biden represent? Biden represents the Obama years, during which nothing like this happened. And Trump represents this. I think people need to kind of get over this trauma from Trump winning, whereby now they're going to credit him with a power over like the psyche of the American voter that I think is not really accurate. But caveat, always a caveat, we'll see. Because I always get this shit wrong anyway. Just laying out, more than anything, I'm just laying out my thought process. You can agree or disagree with that, more than like the conclusion.